Hi everyone, welcome to Star Zoom. Here, we will be on the headlines and the highlight reels to uncover the human story behind the world's biggest icons. In this episode, we step inside the life of a man known across the globe, not just for his goals, his trophies, or his records, but for the relentless obsession that built him. Before the fame, before the fortune, before the world called his name, there was only a boy with a dream. That is the story of Cristiano Ronaldo. Part 1. The Island Boy. Before the Ballon d'Ors, before the millions, there was a skinny boy from a small island who cried himself to sleep because he missed his mother. Long before the stadiums, before the flash of cameras, and the roar of thousands chanting his name, there was only the sound of the Atlantic Ocean crashing against the cliffs of Madeira. Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro was born on February 5, 1985, in Funchal, the capital of that small Portuguese island. Madeira was breathtakingly beautiful. Green mountains, blue waters, endless horizon. But beauty did not mean opportunity. In the mid-1990s, life there was simple, and for many families, it was hard. Cristiano grew up in a modest home perched on the hillside. The house was small, crowded, and often filled with noise from his three older siblings. Money was tight, every expense mattered. There were no luxuries, no guarantees, only work, sacrifice, and hope. His father, Jose Dines Aveiro, worked as a kitman at a local football club. It was humble work. He washed jerseys, organized booths, carried equipment for players who earned more respect in a week than he did in a year. But through that job, football quietly entered Cristiano's life. His mother, Maria Dolores, worked long hours as a cook and cleaning woman. She fought every day to provide stability for her children. Years later, she would admit that she once considered not continuing the pregnancies because of their financial struggles. But she chose life. She chose sacrifice. Cristiano was named after Ronald Reagan, the American president admired by his father. It was a name associated with strength and leadership. At the time, though, he was just a thin, energetic boy with oversized dreams. From the moment he could walk, he ran. From the moment he could run, he chased the ball. At 8 years old, he began playing for Andorinha, the local club where his father worked. Soon after, he moved to Nacional, one of Madeira's bigger teams. Coaches noticed his speed, his control, his boldness, but more than anything, they noticed his hunger. By the age of 12, an opportunity arrived that would change everything. Sporting Lisbon, one of Portugal's biggest clubs, wanted him. It meant leaving Madeira. It meant leaving home. At 12 years old, Cristiano packed his belongings and boarded a plane to Lisbon, nearly 1,000 kilometers away. For the first time in his life, he was truly alone. Lisbon was louder, faster, harder. The other boys of the academy were bigger, stronger, and more polished. They teased him for his island accent. They laughed at his thin frame. Some thought he was too emotional. The nights were the worst. In his dorm room at the sporting academy, the silence felt heavy. He missed his mother's voice. He missed the comfort of home. There were nights he cried quietly, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the dream was worth the pain. But every morning he woke up and trained. Pain can break a person, or it can shape them. Cristiano chose to be shaped. He stayed after practice. He trained alone. He practiced steps over so repeatedly until his leg trembled. While others rest, he worked. While others laughed, he visualized. Loneliness became fuel. Doubt became motivation. Doctors discovered he had a heart condition. His heartbeat would oscillate unpredictably, racing dangerously fast even at rest. For a young athlete, it was terrifying news. Football demanded endurance, strength, a healthy heart. There was talk of surgery in the balance. He underwent the procedure to correct the problem, a laser operation designed to stabilize his heart rhythm. It was successful. Within weeks, he returned to training. But something inside him had changed. The surgery reminded him that nothing was guaranteed. Not talent, not time, not tomorrow. From that moment forward, he trained with urgency. Every sprint mattered. Every repetition mattered. He would not waste the second chance he had been given. Slowly, the skinny boy began to transform. His body grew stronger. His confidence grew louder. His movements became sharper, more explosive. Coaches began promoting him through sporting skill levels at a remarkable pace. He was no longer just talented. He was obsessed. And then came the night that would shape his life forever. August 6, 2003. Sporting Lisbon faced Manchester United in a friendly match to inaugurate their new stadium. For a Portuguese club, it was celebration. For Cristiano, it was opportunity. He was 18 years old. On the other side stood one of the most powerful teams in the world. International stars, established legends, players who had won trophies he had only seen on television. But when the whistle blew, fear did not appear. Instead, he attacked. He ran at defenders relentlessly, step over after step over, quick bursts of acceleration, sharp cuts, confidence without hesitation. Manchester United's defenders struggled to contain him. Every touch felt electric, every movement carried intention. By the final whistle, something extraordinary had happened. The opposition players, seasoned professionals, had taken notice. Some reportedly urged their manager to sign the young winger immediately. Watching from the sidelines was Sir Alex Ferguson. Within days, the decision was made. The skinny boy from Madeira, who once cried himself to sleep in Lisbon, was heading to England. From a small island in the Atlantic to the biggest stage in the world of football. The journey was no longer just a dream. It had begun. Fade to silence. Part 2. The making of a superstar. Talent meets discipline. The plane that carried Cristiano Ronaldo to England in the summer of 2003 did more than just change his address. It changed his destiny. He was 18 years old when he signed for Manchester United. The number on his back was meant to be temporary, just another squad number for a promising young winger. But fate, and perhaps Phillips, had another plan. He was handed the number 7 shirt. It was the number worn by legends: George Best, Eric Cantona, David Beckham. At Manchester United, the number 7 was not just fabric stitched to a jersey. It was expectation. It was his story. It was pressure. Cristiano didn't ask for it. He didn't refuse either. From the moment Cristiano didn't ask for it, but he didn't refuse it either. From the moment he arrived, the difference in level was immediate. The Premier League was faster, stronger, more unforgiving. Defenders did not admire skill. They punished it. Tackles were harder. Space disappeared quickly. Mistakes were exposed publicly. And Cristiano made mistakes. He dribbled too much. He held onto the ball too long. He chose flair when simplicity was smarter. The step-overs were exciting, but sometimes ineffective. Critics in England were ruthless. They called him flashy, showboating, old style, no substance. Pundits questioned whether he would ever become efficient enough to lead a team. He wasn't perfect. He was raw. But inside the walls of Manchester United's training ground, something powerful was forming. Sir Alex Ferguson saw beyond the tricks. He saw hunger. Ferguson did not try to suppress Cristiano's fire. Instead, he shaped it. He demanded more end product, more goals, more assists, more responsibility. He protected him when defenders targeted him. He challenged him when performance dipped. He treated him not just as a talent, but a future leader. For the first time since leaving Madeira, Cristiano had a father figure guiding his development, and he listened. The transformation did not happen overnight. It happened in silence, in the gym, long after teammates had left, It happened in cold recovery sessions, in repeated sprint drills, in hours of shooting practices when the stadium lights were already off. His body changed first. The skinny teenager from Lisbon became stronger, broader, explosive. His speed improved. His balance became harder to break. He learned how to use his physique, not just his skill. Then his mind changed. He began simplifying his game. Dribbles became purposeful. Movements became intelligent. He studied defenders. He studied positioning. He learned when to pass and when to finish. By 2006, the flashes of brilliance were coming consistent. By 2007, they were becoming dominant. Goal began to arrive in numbers no one expected from a winger. Free kicks dipped violently over walls. Long-range shots screamed into the corners. Headers, once considered a weakness, became weapons. Cristiano was no longer just entertaining. He was decisive. The 2007-2008 season became the turning point. Manchester United were competing in every front. The Premier League title race was fierce. The Champions League demanded perfection. And Cristiano delivered. Week after week, he scored with his left foot, his right foot, his head, from distance, from tight angles, under pressure. He finished the season with 42 goals in all competitions, an astonishing numbers for a wide player. But greatness is defined not only by statistics, it is defined by nights. May 21st, 2008, Moscow. The UEFA Champions League final. Manchester United versus Chelsea. Rain poured onto the pitch, turning the stadium into the battlefield. The tension was suffocating. Every mistake could define history. In the first half, Cristiano rose above defenders and powered a header into the net. It was a moment of authority, a declaration that he belonged on the stage. But football is rarely simple. The match ended 1-1 and went to penalties. Cristiano stepped forward. He missed. For a brief second, the world felt like it had paused. Cameras captured his expression: frustration, disbelief, fear that he might have cost his team everything. But destiny sometimes offers redemption through patience. Chelsea missed and missed again. When the final penalty was converted by Manchester United, Cristiano fell to his knees. Tears streamed down on his face, not of despair, but of release. He was the Champions League winner. The boy who once feared his heart might stop beating on a hospital bed was now standing at the summit of European football. Yet, the ultimate recognition was still to come. December 2008, the Ballon d'Or ceremony. The award given to the best footballer in the world. Cristiano walked onto the stage not as a prospect, not as a flashy youngster, but as a complete player, a champion, a leader, a man who had rebuilt himself through discipline. When his name was announced, the room erupted in applause. Cristiano Ronaldo, Ballon d'Or winner. He held the golden trophy in his hands, its surface reflecting years of sacrifice, the lonely nights in Lisbon, the criticism in England, the surgery, the sweat, the doubt. He wasn't born the best in the world. He built himself into it. And as the cameras flashed and the world acknowledged his rise, one truth became undeniable. The raw boy from Madeira had become a superstar. But even greater challenges and rivalries were waiting beyond England. And the world was about to witness the making of an icon. Part 3: Rivalry and Immortality. Pressure, Obsession, Legacy. If England was where Cristiano Ronaldo proved he belonged among elite, Spain was where you'd be asked a far more dangerous questions. Could he become the greatest? In the summer of 2009, at just 22 years old, Ronaldo left Manchester United. He had already won everything in England: the Premier League, the Champions League, the Ballon d'Or. But enough was never part of his vocabulary. Real Madrid came calling. The most decorated club in European history. A club built on Galacticos, on glamour, on impossible expectations. The transfer fee broke world records. And with that fee came weight. The day he was presented at the Santiago Bernabéu, more than 80,000 fans filled the stadium. They weren't there for much. They were there for him. Cameras flashed. White shirts filled the stands like waves in the ocean. He stepped onto the pitch slowly, absorbing the sound. This was not Manchester. This was something else. In Madrid, second place is failure. Effort is expected. Winning is mandatory. And waiting for him on the other side of Spain was a player who would shape his destiny more than anyone could have predicted. Lionel Messi. Messi was already Barcelona's golden boy. Quiet, reserved, almost shy off the pitch. But on it, he was untouchable. Effortless dribbling, perfect balance, vision that seemed supernatural. If Ronaldo was thunder, Messi was lightning. The media framed it instantly: power versus genius, work versus gift, ego versus humility. But beyond the narratives, what truly began was something rarer. Two athletes forcing each other beyond natural limits. At first, Ronaldo tried to dominate the rivalry with intensity. He shot more, ran harder, demanded the ball. He wanted to prove that he could not only compete with Messi, he could surpass him. However, the early years in Madrid were turbulent. Barcelona, under Pep Guardiola, were almost unstoppable. They won La Liga titles. They won Champions League trophies. And Messi kept collecting Ballon d'Ors. Each award ceremony became a silent battlefield. Ronaldo would sit in the audience, applauding, but his jaw often tightened. The cameras would catch the controlled expression, respectful but burning underneath, because he was not built to admire greatness. He was built to trace it. And so, once again, he adapted. Gradually, his game evolved. The flashy winger began to disappear. In its place emerged something colder, more clinical, more efficient. He moved closer to his goal. He reduced unnecessary dribbles. He studied positioning obsessively. He turned himself into a forward who scored from anywhere, inside the box, outside the box, in the air, on the counter-attack. His physique becomes scouted almost unnaturally, muscle layered onto speed, vertical leap sharpened to near impossible heights, recovery routines perfected, diet measured, sleep controlled. He treated his body like a laboratory. The result was terrifying consistency. Season after season, his goal tally defied logic. 40 goals, 50 goals, 60 goals. Numbers that once defied entire careers became annual benchmarks. And yet, individual brilliance was not enough in Madrid. They wanted Europe. For years, Real Madrid chased the elusive Lacademia, the 10th Champions League titles. It became obsession for the club. Pressure mounted. Every elimination felt catastrophic. Then, in 2014, it happened again. Real Madrid lifted the Champions League trophy again. Ronaldo scored in the final and removed his shirt in celebration. Muscle tense, emotion released. It was a release, a pressure, a bravery, of doubt. But that was only the beginning. Between 2014 and 2018, Real Madrid entered the golden era. 4 Champions League titles, 5 years, a dynasty carved under immense pressure. And in those European nights, Ronaldo became something almost mythical. Quarterfinals, semifinals, finals. He delivered when margins were smallest. Hat-tricks against Bayern Munich. Decisive goals against Atletico Madrid. Clinical finishes against Juventus. The Champions League anthem became his soundtrack. He didn't just perform in big games, he hunted them. Meanwhile, the rivalry with Messi never cooled. Every El Clasico was more than a match. It was global theater. Goals were compared instantly. Assists counted in real time. Social media turned every touch into debate. For nearly a decade, football revolved around 2 names. Together, they shattered scoring records in Spain. Together, they pushed the Ballon d'Or standard to unprecedented heights. Together, they forced fans to choose sides. But perhaps the most telling moment of this era came not in Spain, but in Italy. April 3rd, 2018. Juventus versus Real Madrid. Champions League quarterfinal. The ball was crossed into the box. For a split second, it seemed slightly behind him. Not ideal for a shot, but Ronaldo didn't hesitate. He leapt. Time slowed. His body rose to a height that stunned even defenders standing beneath him. Suspended in mid-air, he twisted, aligned, struck. The bicycle kick was perfect. The stadium fell silent. Then something rare happened. Juventus supporters, opposing fans, stood up and applauded. It was recognition beyond rivalry, beyond loyalty. It was acknowledgement of greatness. By then, Ronaldo had already surpassed Real Madrid's legends to become the most clubs of all-time top scorer. In just 9 seasons, he has scored more goals than players who have spent decades wearing white. He didn't simply join history, he overtook it. Yet, beneath the trophies and statistics, there was always a question, one that lingered quietly behind the celebrations. Was this pure greatness, or was it relentless insecurity driving him forward? Perhaps it was both. Perhaps every sprint was fueled by the memory of being overlooked. Every extra repetition in training a response to early criticism. Every goal a reminder that he refused to be second. Greatness often looks like confidence, but obsession is born from doubt. And Ronaldo's obsession never rests. Even after lifting trophies, he trained harder. Even after winning Ballon d'Ors, he demanded more from himself. He seemed to compete not just against Messi, but against time itself. Because immortality in football is fragile. One bad season can shift narratives. One injury can alter history. One new prodigy can steal attention. Ronaldo understood this, so he refused to slow down. By the time he left Madrid in 2018, he had secured his place among the greatest players ever to touch a ball. Multiple Ballon d'Ors, multiple Champions League titles, record that might stand for generations. More importantly, he had defined an era where two players elevated each other beyond imagination. An era where pressure forged legends. An era where Cristiano Ronaldo stopped being just a superstar and became a symbol of relentless ambition. But as the story shows, even machines face moments of vulnerability. And soon, a different kind of challenge, away from club glory, would test his heart in ways rivalry never could. Part 4. National Glory and Personal Trials. Redemption, responsibility, legacy beyond itself. Before he conquered Europe with Real Madrid, before he broke records in Spain, Cristiano Ronaldo had already known heartbreak on the international stage. The year was 2004. Portugal was hosting the European Championship. The country was alive with hope. Streets were covered in red and green. Flags hung from balconies. A generation believed something historic was about to happen. And in the middle of it stood a 19-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo. He was still raw then, fast, emotional, unpolished, but fearless. Throughout the tournament, he shows glimpses of the star he would become. He scored. On paper, Portugal was superior. More talent, more experience, play at home. But football does not follow scripts. We scored. Portugal pushed, attacked, crossed, shot, but nothing worked. As the final whistle blew, the dream collapsed. And the cameras found Ronaldo. He walked off the pitch in tears, not controlled tears, not dignified tears, the kind that come from a young man who believed he had let down his country. That image, the crying teenager in Lisbon, became one of the defining moments of his early career. It was the first time the world saw how deeply international football meant to him. Club glory was personal achievement. National failure was personal pain. In the years that followed, Ronaldo grew into Portugal's leader. The captain's armband wrapped around his arm like a symbol of duty. Every tournament brought accusation. Every elimination brought criticism. The 2006 World Cup ended in semi-final disappointment. Euro 2008 ended quietly. The 2010 World Cup ended with frustration. Then came Euro 2012. Close, painfully close, eliminated in the semi-finals on penalties. With each failure, the questions grew louder. Was Ronaldo only a club player? Could he carry a national team? Was he truly a leader? The criticism cut deeper than club criticism had, because it was not about trophies, it was about nation. Portugal is a small country. Its footballing history, proud but limited. Legends had come before, Eusebio, Figo, but a major international trophy remained elusive. And Ronaldo understood something by then. He was no longer just playing for himself. He was playing for millions. By 2016, he was 31 years old. Experiences decorated, hardened by rivalry and triumph in Spain. Euro 2016 would be different. Portugal did not begin the tournament as favorites. In fact, their path to the final was unusual, advancing through draws, narrow victories, resilience rather than dominance. Critics mocked their style, called it lucky and convincing. But inside the squad, belief was building. There was no longer dependence solely on Ronaldo's experience. They were organized, united, disciplined. And then came the final. Portugal versus France. Paris. The hearts were powerful, confident, driven by their own home crowd. For Portugal, this was another mountain to climb. But just 25 minutes into the match, disaster struck. Ronaldo collided with Dimitri Payet. His knee twisted awkwardly, He tried to continue, but he refused to surrender. But the pain was too much. As he sat on the pitch, tears filled his eyes once again, just like 2004. The captain forced off in the biggest match of his life, carried away on a stretcher. For a moment, it felt cruel, as if destiny was repeating itself, as if the story would end the same way it began, with tears. But something had changed since 2004. He was no longer just a talented teenager. He was a leader. Instead of disappearing into the tunnel, Ronaldo returned to the sideline, his knee heavily strapped, his suit slightly disheveled, his voice louder than ever. He shouted instructions, encouraged teammates, celebrated tackles as if they were goals. He became, in that moment, something beyond a player. He became a symbol. The match dragged into extra time. Then, in the 109th minute, Elder struck the ball from distance. It rolled past the French goalkeeper. Silence in Paris. Explosion among Portuguese heard. When the final whistle blew, Ronaldo collapsed, but this time not in sorrow. He lifted the trophy. 12 years after crying on the same stage in Lisbon, he stood as a European champion. The image of him holding the trophy, eyes closed, face lifted, felt like closure, redemption, completion. From heartbreak to triumph, from tears of pain to tears of joy. It was perhaps the most human moment of his career. And yet, his mission with Portugal did not end here. In 2019, Portugal lifted the inaugural UEFA Nations League trophy. It was another step in solidifying a golden era for the national team, an era led by Ronaldo. Meanwhile, his international goal tally continued climbing. One by one, records fell. He became Portugal's all-time top scorer, the nearest highest scoring international player, then one of the highest scoring players in international football history. Each goal carried his story. Each celebration carried responsibility. Because when he wore the Portugal jersey, it was different. There was no club rivalry, no divided loyalties, only red and green, only home. And perhaps that is where we see him most clearly, not just as a machine built for goals, but as a boy from Madeira who never forgot where he came from. Year 2004 showed the world his vulnerability. Year 2016 showed the world his resilience. Between those 2 years, 12 years apart, lies the story of a man who refused to let failure define him. He had conquered clubs, he had conquered rivals, and now he had conquered doubt. But time, as always, waits for no one. And the final chapters of his career would test not only his greatness, but his ability to evolve. Part 5: Reinvention, Controversy, and the final chapter. Legacy, Evolution, the Cost of Greatness. By 2018, Cristiano Ronaldo had conquered Spain. 4 Champions League titles in 5 years, multiple Ballon d'Ors, Real Madrid's all-time top scorer. For many, it would have been the perfect ending. But Cristiano Ronaldo has never been interested in perfect endings. He is interested in new mountains. And so, at 33 years old, an age when most forwards began to decline, he made another bold decision. He left Real Madrid. He moved to Juventus. Italy was different, slower tactically, but unforgiving physically. Serie A had long been considered the graveyard of aging attackers. It demanded discipline, structure, patience. Ronaldo arrived not as a prospect, not as a rising star, but as a global icon carrying expectation across borders. And yet, once again, he adapted. He adjusted his positioning, conserved energy differently, became even more clinical inside the penalty area. His explosive sprints became more selective, but his timing sharpened. He won league titles. He became one of the fastest players ever to score 100 goals for the club. Even in his mid-30s, his numbers refused to collapse. Still, whispers began. Is he slowing down? Is there an ending? Because in football, decline is inevitable, or so they say. Then, in 2021, something emotional happened. Cristiano Ronaldo returned home. Manchester United, the club where he became a star, the stadium where he first wore the number 7 with trembling ambition. Old Trafford erupted at the announcement. Fans believe in nostalgia, in unfinished story. His second debut felt cinematic. He scored. The crowd roared. It seems as though time had folded in on itself. But football is rarely romantic for so long. Manchester United was no longer the dominant force it once was. The squad was rebuilding. Structure was unstable. Results were inconsistent. Ronaldo still scored, often decisively, but tension grew. He was 36 and then 37. Managers changed, systems changed, roles shifted. For perhaps the first time in his career, Ronaldo was not automatically untouchable. He began games on the bench. The narrative shifted from hero to question mark. Then came the interview in 2022. Explosive, raw, unfiltered. He spoke publicly about feeling betrayed, about lack of respect, about frustration with the direction of the club. The football world divided overnight. Some saw honesty, others saw ego. The result was inevitable. His contract was terminated. After nearly 2 decades at the summit of European football, Cristiano Ronaldo left Europe not with a trophy parade, but with controversy. And once again, he faced a choice: fade quietly into retirement or rewrite the script. In early 2023, he signed with emergence in Saudi Arabia. For some critics, it was proof of decline, a superstar leaving Europe's elite leagues, a final chapter far from the Champions League spotlight. But evolution does not always look glamorous. At the emergence, Ronaldo became more than a player. He became a global ambassador for the sport's expansion. His presence shifted attention towards a new region. Stadiums filled, broadcast numbers surged, and on the pitch, he kept scoring. Late 30s, still sprinting, still training obsessively, still chasing numbers. Because for Ronaldo, records are not for decorations, they are fuel. Yet now, the question feels heavier. Is this the final ascent or the long descent? Greatness had a cost. Years of discipline, years of pressure, years of discipline, years of pressure, years of living under comparison. The body ages, even if the mind refuses to accept it. The explosive winger from 2008 no longer exists. In his place stands something different. A veteran driven not by proving himself to critics, but by proving himself to time. And perhaps that is the final rivalry. Cristiano Ronaldo versus the clock. His story, however, is rarely kind to nuances. It remembers moments. It remembers tears in 2004. It remembers Moscow in 2008. It remembers the bicycle kick in Turin. It remembers lifting the European Championship with Portugal. It remembers the relentless pursuit of Messi. It remembers the obsession. So what will his story ultimately say? Will it say he was manufactured perfection? Will it say he was insecurity transformed into ambition? Will it say he chased record for too long? Or that he extended greatness beyond what was humanly expected? Perhaps it will say something simpler. That he refused limits. That he chose evolution over comfort. That he treated talent as a starting point, not a destination. And in the quiet moments, away from the interviews, away from controversy, there is still a familiar image. Cristiano Ronaldo training alone, repetition after repetition, sprint after sprint, shot after shot, as if the skinny boy from Madeira is still inside him, afraid of losing everything. And so, as the montage unfolds, a young teenager crying in Lisbon 2004, Champions League night under bright white lights, the Portugal trophy raised into the Paris sky, and finally, a solitary figure on a training ground long after sunset. The story completes its cycle. Cristiano Ronaldo was never just talent. He was proof that obsession, sacrifice, and belief can rewrite destiny. Fade to black, silence. And so, the story comes full cycle. From a small island in Madeira to the brightest stadium on earth. From a boy who cried in defeat to a man who lifted trophy for his nation. Through rivalry, criticism, triumph, and controversy, one thing never changed: the relentless drive to be better than yesterday. Cristiano Ronaldo was never just talent. He was proof that obsession, sacrifice, and belief can rewrite destiny. That is Star Zoom, where we look beyond the star and into the story.